Call call the order of the Loveland Planning and Zoning Commission meeting of February 7th. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Perfect. We've got to do before we do roll call, we have to have oath of office for the new member.
Yes, I can. Please rise. Repeat after me. I
David Parker. David Parker.
solemnly swear that I
Solemnly swear that I
will support the Constitution of the United States,
will support the Constitution of the United States,
the Constitution of the State of Ohio,
the Constitution of the State of Ohio,
and the Charter and ordinances
and the Charter and ordinances
of the City of Loveland,
of the City of Loveland,
and will obey the laws thereof,
and will obey the laws thereof,
and will faithfully discharge the duties
and will faithfully discharge the duties
of Planning and Zoning Commission member
of Planning and Zoning Commission member
upon which I am about to enter.
and upon which I'm about to enter.
Congratulations.
Great, thank you.
Mark, you just for the minutes, you would put. We would just mention that Dave is the school board appointee, so and that helps people follow along.
Okay, so
Just in case you were at a council meeting and you followed, Dave is per the city code. The school board makes an appointment. We never had to do it because Al Kressler's been around forever. So
all right, thank you.
Board. Thank you.
Is that in the meeting minutes?
Yep. I'm not a very good scrivener, so you'll have to bear with me here.
Well, we've got your sign too there.
Let's see here. Note the school board member in minutes. Okay, and you need me to call the roll?
Roll, yes, please.
Yes, sir. Mr. Redmond?
Here.
Mr. Parker?
Here.
Mr. O'Neill?
Here.
Mr. Weisgerber?
Here.
Babe,
Here.
we have a quorum.
Yes, we do. All right. Well, we'll move on to the review and approval of the meeting minutes from the January 3rd, 2023 meeting. Does anybody have any comments, corrections, or additions to these meeting minutes? Hearing none, do we have a motion to approve?
I'll move to approve as submitted.
Second.
Of Mr. Weisgerber with the motion, Mr. O'Neill with the second. Roll call. Do you need discussion?
You can abstain, yeah.
Yes. Any other discussion?
No, I don't think so.
Would you like me to call the
Yeah,
roll?
please do. Yes, I'm sorry.
Mr. Weisgerber?
Yes.
Mr. O'Neill?
Yes.
Mr. Bateman?
Yes.
Mr. Redmond?
Yes.
Mr. Parker?
Abstain.
Abstain.
Okay, next order of business is open forum. We've got 2 people signed up for open forum. This is regarding case 29-09, which is, well, actually, you're signed up for the public hearing. Open. There's nobody signed up for open forum, correct? Yeah. Okay, so we'll skip over open forum, seeing no one who's signed up for that, and we'll move on to the public hearing. So we'll need to open up the this to a public hearing, I'm assuming, correct?
Correct.
Okay,
Yes.
so we have a motion to open the meeting to public hearing for case 2022-09, the zoning text amendment for the mobile food vendor regulations.
I'll move to open the public hearing.
Second.
Mr. Bateman?
Yes.
Mr. Weisgerber?
Yes.
Mr. Parker?
Yes.
Mr. O'Neill?
Yes.
Mr. Redmond?
Yes.
Public hearing's open to 7:06 p.m.
Mr. Powers? Yes, would you like to approach the podium? And are we going to run the timer on this?
Yep, I can
Okay.
run the time.
Please.
Wait till he gets after he
Yeah.
states his name.
Yeah, well, after you state your name and address, then you can continue on. Thank you.
Chad Powers, 1129 Avalon Drive, Mainville, but I'm the owner of Narrow Path Brewing at 106 Carl Brown Way in Loveland. Just wanted to come and I know that we've been talking a lot about the zoning text amendments for mobile food vendors. just wanted to kind of at least let you guys know when when I came to Loveland to even think about starting a brewery, a business down here. It was always my intention to have food trucks as part of that business plan. So we sat in that room right over there with former mayor, Mr. Kennedy, with Eva, and we kind of talked about that. And at that point, one of the things that was brought up was that in a staff meeting that was pretty soon, right before that, or a gathering, I should say, of some staff members. They met in Williamsburg, which at that time was there was the old Firehouse Brewery, and they remarked, "Gosh, why can't we have something like this in Loveland?" And I was like, "Here I am. Let's make it happen." Part of that plan was always for us to focus all of our investment and infrastructure in the brewery space and none in the food, knowing that a big part of the motif of microbreweries was the ability to have food trucks, the ability to have mobile food vendors. That's kind of, that's a lot of what you see, a lot of what our consumers kind of expect for a business of our size in our type of place. I appreciate the work that everybody's done to work on redlining this and proposing a zoning amendment change. I'm concerned. I'm kind of nervous about how does this change everything for me? How does this change my ability to operate down here if for instance, the food truck that is on site has to leave? How does that change my ability to do what we do down there? And it changes it pretty drastically. It means that either I lose that ability to offer food to people, and I have to rely on surrounding businesses, which I would love to do, and which we have tried to do. But it has never worked. They have not been able to provide a level of service that people would come to us expect from being able to grab food. We've tried and tried and tried, and it just hasn't worked. So this this being kind of a standard motif for breweries, I know that there's some in the writing of it, there's some grandfathering in that we can kind of keep doing what we're doing. But if we were to change that, then that would really drastically change my ability to do business the way that we've been doing it, which never seemed to be a problem before. But apparently it is to some people now, and I think I understand why. But just to come up here and say, all of this will change things pretty dramatically for me, and I don't know. I guess I just want you guys to hear that, to know that this will probably create in a year or 2 years or 3 years a significant restructuring of what I'm able to do down here. So it's really kind of all good. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Bob, is it Isberg? Isberg, yes. Please approach the podium and state your name. Please spell it also, just for the record, and then.
Yeah, Bob Isberg. It's ISBURGH at 11637 Windy Hill Court. I'm in Sims Township. I've been a resident in the community for over 30 years now. I'm a part-time employee of Narrow Path, for full disclosure. What I've studied, I've gone through the video from the August meeting and studied the data from the survey and the presentation, and I've studied the proposed changes. When I first became aware of this, one of the biggest distinction for me was the difference between what I'll call less than permanent food service on private property that's already zoned for food service versus public property or property that's not zoned for food service. To me, that's a huge distinction. So I'd like to focus mostly on food service, less than permanent food service on private property already zoned for food service. A couple reasons why, why would there need to be food trucks? I think it's pretty clear the current capacity of other food service options doesn't meet the demand, particularly during the summer months and good weather. There's a highly I don't need to tell everybody, there's a highly seasonable nature of the demand for food service. And also the nature of the food service that being looked for, sit down versus quick, sit down inside, full dinner, lunches versus sit down outside, smaller bites and so forth. The other thing that's going on clearly is in a lot of cases is the size of the lots and businesses working with existing buildings. They just don't have the ability to put brick and mortar food service on top of another business that's utilizing that space. Again, a lot of people are looking for quick and convenient, and also, again, and particularly in our case, supporting food service also supports responsible alcohol consumption. One thing I was quite surprised with the proposed changes is it didn't seem to be consistent with a lot of the data and discussion from the August meeting. Very clearly, as Chad pointed out, these changes will eliminate ongoing, regular, what I'll call again, less than permanent food service in these situations. And I didn't hear that. I didn't see that in the data, and I didn't hear that in the discussion. Particularly, some of the data that was presented, comparisons were made with Columbus and Hilliard, and that's not comparable to the situation here. And there was a lot of discussion about needing to have variable requirements by zoning area, and there's very little of that written into the proposed change beyond some restrictions in number of days. A couple other considerations I noted before I finished. I do agree the standard for regular food service beyond brick and mortar should be at a higher requirement than daily, few hours coming in, coming out food truck. I think those requirements should be nearly, if not the same as the brick and mortar requirements, particularly from a health and safety standpoint. If I go to a food truck, I expect that food to be just as safe to consume as any other restaurant. And I believe you find that that's virtually the case already. Also from a safety standpoint, in terms of fire protection, public safety and so forth, that should be just the same requirements as brick and mortar for ongoing food service. There was a comment made in August about not having food trucks for special events. I think that's exactly when some of the temporary food trucks are needed, when there's an extraordinary influx of people for an event that can't be supported by existing infrastructure, and they can have food and drink while they're enjoying the event. And it does make sense to have specific objective requirements for services versus depending on special exemptions and the like, like we have had. I guess that's my time. I had a couple other points, particularly relative to making sure the city's not missing out on payroll taxes. because there's clearly payroll and employees being paid with food truck service. And then finally, just like the fact that the same food service requirements should be met for health and safety and so forth, I think the same building related requirements in terms of setbacks should be consistent with brick and mortar.
Thank you very much.
That's
Appreciate it.
Thanks.
All right, no one else is signed up for the public hearing, so we will have do we have a motion to close the portion of public hearing?
I move to close public hearing.
Second.
Mr. Bateman with the second. Mr. O'Neill,
Yes.
Mr. Bateman,
Yes.
Mr. Weisgerber,
Yes.
Mr. Parker,
Yes.
Mr. Redmond.
Yes.
Motion carries. Public hearing is closed at 7:17 p.m.
Okay, so do we have? I guess, Corey, would you like to just give us? I know we've talked about this a lot, but just a brief overview
Sure.
of the option, what we are
Right.
at this point in time.
Yeah, absolutely. So really, we've really discussed this almost ad nauseum, and at the end of the day, I a couple of points, and I would to Mr. Isberg's comments. There are specific provisions in the regulations that directly assist and are written in a manner as to be beneficial to narrow path. Particularly, I would look at section 1165. It's the last page. It talks about there's two provisions. There's 07 and 08, which talk about outdoor and accessory kitchens accompanying principal uses. And I will read verbatim: existing and lawfully approved and permitted restaurants, bars, microbreweries, and other similar uses operating an outdoor kitchen, accessory structure kitchen, or outdoor food point of sale truck or mobile trailer for food preparation or service prior to the date of enactment of this resolution of this section shall be permitted to remain, provided they are not altered, expanded, or further modified. Notwithstanding such the foregoing, the uses have to achieve minimum qualifications to continue. A, and this was discussed specifically in one of the numerous work sessions, that they need to be connected to potable water with a suitable backflow prevention device. That means they can't truck water in and truck it out. They have to have a permitted electrical connection suitable for outdoor use, which is just it's an electric box and a marine connection, just like you would a boat or whatever. Can't run off a generator. You have a year to bring that into compliance. So if you're a business and you host that, then you have a year to bring that into compliance. And those are not, put a faucet in and put a marine grade connection in and you're good to go. And otherwise, the use of that moving forward would have to come to the Planning and Zoning Commission. And they also have to have licensing with Board of Health and all those other things. So in my mind, that's those specific provisions specifically deal with the particular instance that was referenced this evening that would be a cause for concern. That is to say, you get a connection for them to have a potable water source and an electrical connection, pretty modest upgrades, and you're good to go. And what altered or expanded, again, you look at that. A food truck is a food truck. Altered and expanded in terms of a food truck would be hauling in another food truck. It's not swapping one vendor for another. So those are things in the interpretation of the code that you have to look at, and I believe that the proposed amendments adequately address that without fail. So that's really my take on that. I really think that the Commission's done a really good job kind of carving something out from scratch, going from a situation where every instance was prohibited unless it was specifically approved. Every instance had to go through an arduous public hearing. Now it's much easier, it's administrative, and or the existing installations can remain. So that would be my point. The option in front of planning and zoning this evening, you can vote to recommend. Now that you've opened and closed public hearing, you can vote to recommend it as adopted or as presented to City Council. You can vote to further modify, or you can decline, and you can vote to not recommend. So those are your three options. Upon disposition of that, we prepare a notice of final action, regardless of what the outcome is, and we transmit that to council. So
It really does protect the existing mobile food trucks that are in place with minor modifications. Corey did a really good job of sort of carving all of that out, and the fact that it's all done in-house, desktop, no more going in front of P&Z, and it's all done administratively is another key element that doesn't require people to come here and go through that. So it's a pretty good protection of all the existing. So really, it's when you talk about narrow path, hops and berries, it was really written. It was really written to protect them very specifically. With those are pretty minor amendments, electric and water connections. So I think when you look at it from that standpoint, I do think it sort of followed the survey results. So we've come a long way from the. And actually, to be honest with you, Dave, I wasn't really following the rule. Those were only technically good for a year. You always had to come back. This actually takes away that, cleans all that up. Because technically, everybody who had an existing one was supposed to come back every year. We just never really followed up on it. So in that way, this provision actually makes it even better. So
Yeah, that was part of the initial issue was we get exception and it kind of rotated and there really wasn't much enforcement on it. And then when we had some new requests, it was like it really was time to relook at this. So I think we've done a pretty good job. I think we've done it such that we protect your business as well as others. And I appreciate staff taking the time to do the amount of work that we've done to craft this. So.
Question? I don't know if we want to open up the floor at this point in time.
I do have, Corey, one question.
Yes, sir.
So in the event, specifically in the event for Narrow Path Brewery, should they want to modify what they what they currently have, it would come before the P&Z board.
Yeah, and yes, to your point, and I would indicate that if you look at that provision, that last regulatory provision, and there's so many sections and subsections in that, but if you look at that last E, existing or proposed, let's see, I'm sorry, D, as of the effective date of these regulations, you can't establish it. What we would say is if you're going to further modify or expand it, come back for dispensation.
I've recently become aware of probably not a new trend, but in addition to what most people probably think of when they think of the traditional mobile vendor, the bread truck kind of thing, but they're actually selling pretty high-end customized trailers, with kitchens in them. And, so I can see where something like that may come down the road where somebody may want to bring in a bigger unit. A bigger unit. I mean, you can buy these trailers now pre-assembled with stainless steel panels, FRP panels that already meet health codes, international health codes. So anyway, that's what I was just trying to make sure. I mean, if somebody was, trying to make an improvement to what they already have, certainly I wouldn't want to hold them back from
And I think, to my point, I think about it, interpretation. I mean, when we would look at enlarged, what does enlarged mean? Well, you have one and you meet the standard, you have an electric connection, you got water. I'm going to look at that and say, if you're swapping it for a newer model because the old one's worn out, the new one's got
more efficiency
and this and that and all that,
Mhm.
That's a repair replacement.
Mhm.
And so that's not, necessarily really, it's really a substitution. It's not an enlargement or an expansion of that. It would be that I have a mobile food vendor and it's so popular, I now need a second vendor, and now I'm going to pull 2 trailers in. That's when we would want to have it come back. See, and here's just another point, and I would, we're actually starting the process of the zoning code amendment and talking about restructuring the code. One thing that, we have an LMO and the overlay, but I think that one thing that I've had a lot of success with in the past is for all of your commercial corridors having an overlay process that specifically gives the Planning and Zoning Commission the ability to hear deviations and variances from, here's what's permitted, and now it's sort of an expedited variance. It's not really a variance, but it's not really a PUD. It's just sort of this. Here's the rules. These are our goals, and you guys have the ability to make modifications in that. And I would look specifically at all of our commercial corridors to do that. And I actually had a conversation with Liz Fields, our zoning consultant, today about the downtown area specifically and wanting to have an overlay for that. Number one, for HPPC, to make sure that that's identified and to provide that recourse in that process. But then also to assist in, general zoning matters like this, that the P&Z would be able to grant. You could look at something and say, hey, if you got the room and you got a couple vendors and you can fit them in there, then yeah, maybe it makes sense and it's not obtrusive or anything like that. But that would be something you guys could.
So I think the just to be clear, I think the concern I heard in the public hearing is that if there was to change to modify what you got, you couldn't do it. And what there's language in there that if it needed to swap out the truck with a different truck or change it, that it would have to come in front of committee again. So it's not prohibiting that. It's just saying you have to show up again and work through it. And honestly, we can't speak for the future, but the idea is to preserve what you've got. Right. But if you wanted to put 20 trucks on the site, we'd have to look at that, obviously. Right.
And we're going to be as I don't know what we will be as generous as possible in our interpretive license of the code to make sure that because we know that we're business friendly in this community, and we want to make sure that we accommodate our businesses here. So that is, and I think we've done that. I mean, we've done that. We have to have language. You can't. It has to have some controls in it.
Going back in the history, what he was talking about when they first came here, wasn't even a permitted use in the downtown district. The city had to do a text amendment. He was our pigeon, and he was very patient, and he worked through it because we didn't have any codes for it. So I really think the way you wrote this and Corey wrote this, I think that there's a protection in place for people who simply don't have the physical abilities to add a kitchen. And I think they're very protected in this situation with minor. Gosh, that's a Trip Days hardware almost to fix what needs to be done.
Right.
And
but to your point, it also recognizes that those that have not come yet, this is the process that you would do that. So it protects the folks who have made an investment and were pioneers in that regard.
Yeah.
And
such as the car wash to come.
You're right.
DVD.
And that's a classic case in point, because they'll go through, through LMO, and then they'll be able to bring those food trucks in under the current regulations. But with the LMO, and as we recraft our zoning code, they could seek some further dispensation on that.
In the definition of a mobile food vendor is not a food truck. It can be a trailer. It's very broad, so that helps them to not tie them to just a food truck. It's
pretty encompassing.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I think the intent when we went through this was to try to make it as flexible yet codified as possible, so that we still had some parameters to.
Yeah, I think the quote at the public meeting by the gentleman from Narrow Path at the time was, You need to find something. It isn't the wild, wild west of food trucks in the downtown district, but also not be so restrictive that it cuts everybody off. That was the exact quote from the gentleman from Narrow Path, and I think that's what you crafted. You sort of found that ground where they're not coming in going, holy crap, they're everywhere, versus those that are in that we know, protect, and
Right.
So I think you did a pretty good job. So
So what are our options?
Your
again?
three options are to vote to recommend adoption as presented, recommend adoption with further modification, or not recommend.
which means it's still Corey still takes it to
I s-
council, even
yeah, I
if you
still
don't.
have to tell him what you did.
Either way, he transmits
Fess
it.
up.
Well, I'll make a motion to approve and recommend to council as drafted.
Second.
So I have Mr. O'Neill with the first and Mr. Weisgerber with the second. Roll call. Mr. O'Neill,
Yes.
Mr. Weisgerber,
Yes.
Mr. Parker,
Yes.
Mr. Bateman,
Yes.
Mr. Redmond.
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.
All right. Next order of business
There isn't any.
is no new business, old business.
The only thing I have is communications, sir.
Okay.
It's we were advised by the Board of Elections, Claremont. This is a polling location. So May 2nd, you have a primary election here. So we'll either need to cancel the May 2nd meeting or reschedule. And Eva left me a note. Question mark third Tuesday, because that generally is kind of the gap or the window if we do get an application. And we could certainly reserve that open.
Yeah, you can never go forward because they're in here the day before with all the equipment.
Seems like we've been having a lot of elections lately.
Yeah, I just wrote third wrong here. Third Tuesday.
Third Tuesday's the 16th. Yes. Of May.
16.
So we could just reserve that date for the May meeting.
Yeah, I wanted to make you aware that
Yeah.
that could be. We can do that administratively.
when we,
Okay.
we get to that point, if there's any.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. Very good.
That's it.
That's it. We have a motion to adjourn.
Make the motion to adjourn.
Second?
Who had the second? I'm sorry, I was right.
Brian. Mr. O'Neill.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We're adjourned at 7:35.
Thank you.